All
All
right. It's
right.
not about how many people we have in here. It's about having the right people in here this week. That's what matters to me. I want to make sure that all the frustrations that we could see clearly coming out from the community over the last week can be addressed the best we can. I mean, communication has always been the biggest criticism. And in a lot of those cases, that's fair enough too. We really try and do our best with the information we have. But Alex, why don't you just sort of kick things off by giving a kind of an overview? Is there anything you want to bring to the conversation before we get into the questions today?
Firstly, just want to acknowledge that there's obviously been a lot of intense conversations happening across Discord and various other channels in the last week. Some of it very good, some of it not so good, shall we say. But what it has really reinforced is that we do have a very, incredibly passionate community here. People wouldn't be getting so fired up if they didn't care so much. And there has been some really constructive feedback coming out of this, both around the actual beta launch of Mark itself, but also more broadly across, all things Futureverse. Are there areas that we can improve? Yes, 100%. Always. There's always areas that everyone can improve, and we take on your feedback, even though it may not seem like that at times. We 100% do. We're always working diligently to improve, but sometimes these things do take time to actually get fully implemented. But I do want to just kind of manage expectations and frame things a bit more clearly, I guess, to help give greater clarity into what we can talk about openly and what we can't moving forward. So one thing that I do really want to make clear is the kind of delineation between Futureverse and the root network itself. The root network is a public, soon to be fully decentralized and open source blockchain. Anyone is welcome to build on it, and if there's anyone out there right now who wants to be building on the root network and doesn't have the right info or support, feel free to reach out to me or anyone in the community team, and we'll help facilitate that. Obviously, we're not fully live with the root network yet, but there's a lot of that coming with all of the relevant developer documentation. But if you are looking to build something that would be considered a key service, like a marketplace, for example, then we're happy to kind of work with you more directly on expediting that. The end goal, for the root network is obviously to have as many people building on it and using it as possible. But this is naturally going to start with people that are close to Futureverse. It's not us playing favorites or anything. It's just how tech ecosystems organically grow. If you look at the Apple App Store, when that first launched, the people that were launching apps on that were Apple devs and their close kind of partners and relations. So, this goes to say, especially with a decentralized kind of blockchain, that if you're not happy with any of the apps or services that are being developed on it, then, we encourage you to actually get stuck in and kind of provide alternatives. On the other hand, Futureverse is a private company. As a private company, we reserve the right to keep much of our business private, and this is pretty standard operation for businesses. In fact, personally, I feel like we operate more openly than 99% of businesses in the world. There are actually very few businesses that have open forums like Discord to engage with their community on a daily basis, have these sorts of weekly chats, have such regular cadence of open discussions from senior leadership, and you'll see that cadence become more consistent as we start to roll up the new content series. But as a private business, we're just not going to reveal our internal strategies, team structures, partnerships, or any of that sort of other confidential information that we don't deem necessary to share publicly. So, as I touched on before, like once we have our new content series live, which we're working on in the background, and I think you'll all be very happy with, I do expect that the number of questions being raised, in Discord and in 30 Minutes Max like this will drop dramatically. And it's about really making sure that we have the right comms channels in place to provide the right information so that you fully understand exactly how all the products work without necessarily needing to know how the business works. So from here, the monthly updates will tell you what we're up to at a high level. Product launches will tell you all about the key product updates, and the FAQs and support updates will cover any issues relating to those product launches that are often come to us through support tickets, and the status of those fixes. And the PR press releases will be where you find out about the partnerships. But how we operate our business day to day and the nature of our commercial relationships isn't something that we will be publicly discussing.
Yeah, all of that's really great to know. I just want to give a quick shout out to all the community managers. Very difficult position they've been in, being between a product that's not from us, but still answering all the questions relating to it, and they don't have that direct access to. So been really hard on them, and I think they've done a really great job at being the middleman in this situation and providing the comms they could provide. But we've got some great questions here, so I just want to jump straight back into those. Thanks for clarifying as much of that as you could, Alex. How many active developers are working on the Root network? Were they mainly from Sen's team, or are they new hires?
So this is one of those questions that I just kind of touched on. This is how we operate internally, and this isn't, how many staff we have working on a particular product at any one time isn't something that we plan to discuss openly. But the Root network is in the process of being open sourced, so that we hope that, a lot of people will come and contribute to its growth moving forward.
Fair enough. The next one's something very close to my heart, because I've said this on numerous occasions, as many of the team has. When something becomes public information, it means we get to actually just go out and say it. And it was kind of a bit of a roadmap in a way, because this question here is centralized exchanges, DEXs, and then marketplace. Has that changed?
No, that's still the intended order of review. I think the kind of thing that has shifted the perspective there is the fact that we launched Mark. That the Halo Lab team launched Mark, but it is in beta. And when we talk about that order of rollout, that is kind of talking from more of a full public rollout perspective. So I know it's kind of a lot of questions around what's happening with exchanges, and that is something that we just literally cannot talk about, because discussing any of that publicly actually jeopardizes our ongoing negotiations and discussions there. So please understand, we actually just can't field any questions relating to exchanges.
100%. All right. Given that the Root network has royalty enforcement, has the Futureverse approached or plans to approach any established artists, or we sort of just build it and they will come approach?
So our focus has always been more about how to attract large brands and global IP first. And those brands and IP that we're speaking to really do value the royalty enforcement mechanic. From our mind, it's a lot easier to onboard the masses through engaging with large, well-established IP partners and existing brands, because those are, the sort of things that can convert millions of users at a time, as opposed to individual artists, which is, it's a lot smaller. So really, we're not targeting we don't have an active plan in place to go and try and, recruit established artists. That is a bit in that front, I guess, if they see the value in the network and the more activity going on there, and as we say, things like the on-chain enforcement, then hopefully they will see this as the place that is, providing a viable option for them, when all of the other kind of marketplaces on Ethereum, etc., just seem to be catering more to traders than creators, which isn't a sustainable approach, and kind of, in my opinion, part of the reason why we're in this current slump across the industry is too much focus being put on traders rather than creators.
Yep, that's fair. All right, this next question's in two parts. I might just read them both out and you can answer them at your will. If there is a partner company running a marketplace, how come there are no info about the company? The website is not having any other info. And the second part to this is, who are the individuals? Their real names appreciated. that make up the team that created and operates Mark?
So, once again, Halo Lab, the team behind Mark, is a third party. There is some kind of crossover there between Futureverse, and as we've kind of discussed within some of the chat, one of the people behind Halo Lab is a Futureverse shareholder, but that is natural in terms of the growth of a tech ecosystem. We wouldn't expect some completely separate third party from the other side of the world to be the first person launching products on us. On the Root network. But Halo Lab is their own team, and what they choose to share about themselves and the work they do there is entirely up to them. It's not up to us to enforce that. It is kind of one of the key tenets of Web3 that it's more about the code and the tech itself than the people. If you look at the industry as a whole, an incredible amount of people in this industry operate anonymously. I mean, just look at like Yuga. The whole founding team were anonymous until they got doxxed. That's entirely their choice, and that is, part of the fundamentals of Web3 is it's up to the individual to choose what level of exposure they give themselves. So, I would imagine most people here didn't go looking into the founding teams behind OpenSea or Blur or Uniswap before using those tools. So once again, when you're asking details about individuals behind a third-party team, that's not up to us to dox them. And if you feel strongly about that, feel free to reach out to Halo Labs directly through the feedback or support forms on their website, and if they may choose to actually publish more information about themselves and their team, or even host an AMA or something like that. But that's not up to us.
Understandably, we've got lots of marketplace questions, which is great, because when we get through all these questions, I want to open the room up so we can hear any feedback, of course, and get any more questions filtered through. But I'll continue with these marketplace questions for now. Is this the marketplace the team have been referring to on and off over the last year or two, or not about a year or two? Or is there actually to be a solely Futureverse built owned marketplace?
Yeah, so we definitely haven't been talking about this for 2 years. I mean, Fluff only launched just over 2 years ago, but I do understand that time moves differently in this world, and it does. It certainly feels like a much longer time. So, I mean, Futureverse has a range of commercial clients with who we work with on various parts of the technology stack. And it's not our intention to create or operate our own marketplace or many of these other kind of key tools. There's numerous factors involved there, including both the allocation of resources and certain kind of regulatory hurdles that are required for anyone who operates these. So, yeah, I mean, Mark is the Root Network marketplace for now until someone else comes along and builds another one. And then it's kind of open market. Whoever has the best product will naturally attract the most users.
I think that kind of answered this next one, which is sort of part of the same question.
Yeah.
Is this the marketplace that's being built for cool cats? Or is that separate to Mark?
This isn't the marketplace that's being built for cool cats, no. Although there is some overlap.
All right. Okay, this is an interesting one. It's been mentioned numerous times that development's been going on for 5 years behind the scenes before Fluff World. What areas did this deployment cover? Or this development cover, sorry. Any details you can give us there?
Yeah, it's not entirely accurate as a question, but I do think I get what they're coming from. We have discussed in the past, and Aaron in particular, that, I think it's probably over 5 years now, but it wasn't necessarily 5 years like before Fluffs. Aaron founded Centrality in 2016, and that shortly followed, Silo, CentraPay, CentraPass, etc., who are all key parts of the Futureverse ecosystem. So there's been a lot of the core technical development around, blockchain architecture, with the original SensNet, and then how some of that led into the root network. Also things like Silo in terms of the comms perspective and how that's feeding into our wider suite of tools, as well as the CentraPay payment solutions, CentraPasses, kind of digital identity tech, which is actually forms some of the underpinning for FuturePass itself. So there are certain components of what is now Futureverse that has existed for 5 or more years, but that's not really related to Fluff World itself.
Cool. I want to paraphrase this next question a bit. There's kind of like 3 parts to it. The first part is pretty easy to break down. Can we get some estimation on the first Bazooka's partnered product? Because the Bazookas so far have not quite met expectations regarding to the partnerships. But it also goes on to say one thing. Oh, no, do Bazookas. Let's go Bazookas.
Yeah, I mean, like Bazookas, as with any announcement, will come out when they're ready. We're never going to rush those along, or like the days of alpha hunting are pretty few and far between nowadays. Although if you have seen, Aaron's been posting some sneaky little alpha through the Mark video feature. But yeah, like Bazookas, just you'll know them when you see them. Although I'm surprised that they say that none of the Bazookas so far have kind of met expectations. I mean, we have partnered with FIFA, the largest organization in the world, and had, I think, 500,000 downloads of that app. So I think as far as a kind of first shot of a Bazooka goes, that's pretty good.
There's lots of little questions inside this one question. Another one here is about why we launched on, well, not us, obviously it keeps coming back to that, why Mark launched on the mainnet rather than a testnet first. What's the reasoning behind that?
I mean, this is in a large part down to the Mark team itself. We had done some testing on testnet, but they decided that having their contracts fully audited, wanted to launch on mainnet to get a more accurate kind of test of a full production environment, and then allow them to kind of use that feedback to expedite these final ranges of final stages of updates, so that they can take the final product to market faster. Obviously, there have been a few small, I guess, issues with like transactions not going through and small amounts lost here and there. I imagine for 99% of those cases, it's at most a couple XRP, which has probably come from the XRP that we've already distributed to a lot of FuturePasses for free. If anyone has actually had any significant financial impact from the testing, please let us know. We'll happily reimburse that. But yeah, the expectation was to really just try and get all of the final issues identified, so that we can get those resolved, so that the Mark team can get those resolved as soon as possible and take Mark fully live.
All right, the next part of this question, I think we've already answered, because that's regarding transparency in the team and why we chose them, which wasn't quite the case. But the next part is interesting. Have they received any subsidy from the Ecosystem Development Fund? Referring to Mark here.
No, the Halo Labs team and Mark haven't received any tokens from the Ecosystem Fund. And yeah, just to reiterate, we don't choose companies to build on the root network. Anyone can come to us with a proposal.
Sweet. I'm just going through these questions in order here. It looks like we're moving away from Mark and into AI a little bit. Mm-hmm. Is the Future Chat Futureverse's own development, or is it using open source LLM, large language model?
So we build on top of open source, especially using in relation to Futureverse Chat, built on top of an open source LLM. Generally speaking, nobody rivals open source models. So instead of us trying to replicate all of that work from the ground up, we tend to build on top of it. And David, who is now as our Chief Innovation Officer and leading the innovation department, has always been a large proponent of using open source material, because in terms of sheer pace of development, it's next to impossible to actually outpace open source material with fully proprietary development. So yeah, we take on all of the developments that are being made through the open source AI community and then feed those into the work that we're building on top with some proprietary development on top, which I personally agree is, that's the best way to build, is to utilize, the work that's being done globally and then drive it in the specific direction you want with your own proprietary development.
Yeah, it very much talks to why we built on top of Substrate and how others will then build on top of what we've created to speed the process of bringing things to market. So that's very much building on the shoulders of giants. Let's be one of those giants, eh? Amen. All right. We are staying with AI here. We're getting to the thingy art. Is this completely developed by the Futureverse, or is it using Stable Diffusion? Like the 3D, we've got something else here. The 3D thingy art was teased. Is this Futureverse's own IP development, or is it derived from another open source implementation?
So I think this is somewhat of a repeat of the previous answer, in the sense that our 3D research is being built collaboratively with the open source community, and it is a mixture of that open source with some completely novel concepts from inside the Futureverse Innovation Department. So it's not like we're entirely using just third-party open source tools, but we are building on top of those with our own proprietary development.
Now, I remember this next one coming up, because at that time I wasn't minting any thingy art. All right. And it says, I don't believe we got anything for our portals yet. I remember back in the day, some of the thingy filters were doing portals.
Yeah.
Hot mic?
We got a hot mic.
What can you tell us about the portal of the thingy art? Is that still a thing? Are we going to deliver on that?
Yep. Yeah. So the root rewards that were promised for thingy art is still the portal thingy art is still very much planned. It's just about when exactly we will distribute those tokens. I can go back and circle back with the team and follow up on that. I would imagine it will be probably towards the end of the year or early next year that we'll start to get through some of these kind of backlog distributions.
All good. We haven't forgotten you. We know all about it. It will happen. All right. Is there a reason why the ASM team didn't give an explanation about the restructure at all?
I don't really understand this question. I mean, the ASM spoke about the roll-up a lot, spoke publicly. Every member of every constituent company was taken through the restructure in great detail, and we, spoke about it in great detail publicly as well. I guess it may be relating to the fact that people like David aren't, inside the Discord as much now. But ASM is, a key part of Futureverse, and as touched on previously with some of the new content series that we're putting out, we will be looking to highlight certain components of the business and bring certain people, certain subject experts like David, back to the forefront to do, deep dives on specific topics that are being asked by the community.
A lot of those community managers who are part of those AMAs, I'd love to see them back at the forefront again, because they had the whole team on there. It was really cool. And they're still all here with us, so that'll be amazing. But we'll get it straight to the next question. Can we get answers from which of the white paper pools did the International Rabbit Day rewards come from?
Yes, that came from the community pool allocation. Same place as the quests.
Sweet. Okay. How will the 10% ecosystem development fund get allocated? Interesting one. Can I answer that first? How about economically, sensibly, responsibly, and environmentally? But you probably got a different answer.
We're gonna throw it off the top of a building and see who gets it. No, it's I mean, we don't have a public strategy in place for the ecosystem development fund at present, but a lot of that, will come down to as users or companies start developing on the Root network, they can reach out to us and discuss this. We can probably circle back on in this once it comes to like the full launch of Root network and more of the developer resources. There'll be a more public plan in place there of what happens with those, the allocation of those funds.
Sweet. Oh, an XRPL question, something I can actually answer if I wanted to. All right, transactions are deterministic and are irreversible after one ledger, being 4 seconds. Why does bridging to TRN take so long?
So this
Do you want me to answer?
I got it. This is an intentional delay, what we call the challenge period. It opens up an opportunity for anyone wanting to challenge the transaction submitted by the relayer, and it's part of our optimistic approach when it comes to handling bridges from another chain. Given time and how the networks themselves evolve, that may change, but for now it's important that we, take the safest approach before looking to optimize further.
And I think that's important for people to understand, because most people are used to 4 seconds transactions on Ledger, whether they're sending to an exchange or wherever those transactions are going. But this is different. This is changing chains. So, all right, the next question. Why only 9,993 fluffs? Any particular reason this collection isn't at 10,000? Have they...
I think
are
this
their
is
pronouns now invisible?
I think this is literally just an indexing issue on marketplaces. A lot of marketplaces and indexes will automatically exclude assets that are sat within like a burn address or have been sent accidentally to a non-existent wallet. I do know this has been the case for a couple people. There have been people in the past that reached out and said, "Oh, I accidentally sent it to." I left the last few digits off the wallet address when I sent it, which is gutting to hear because there is nothing you can do to get that back. So I think that's literally just an indexing issue. There are 10,000 plus, but I think some of them, by the sounds of it, 7 of them are lost in purgatory.
Oh, out there with the seekers somewhere. All right. New questions coming in, which I love. Are we currently receiving Bootstrap rewards during this staking cycle, or do those take over, or will that take over when Quest 2 is completed?
My understanding is yes, and as we've touched on, there's a lot of updates coming in terms of how we're displaying the rewards being earned for staking across the cycles, and that whole dashboard is getting an update to the UI. Yes, my understanding is that we're currently receiving, stakers are currently receiving Bootstrap rewards. I don't have the details of how that will evolve over time, but we will be releasing a lot of information around the reward structure and the various components that make that up in the coming weeks with the updates to the staking dashboard itself.
Cool. I like this next question. Your highlight of the week so far. Can I start with mine?
Go for it.
My highlight is seeing Gary get shot down and denied their motion to, just denied. Gary got denied. He cannot go and...
they can't appeal.
Cannot appeal. They can't appeal to the trial, till this trial is over, because we've still got to see what happens with Brad and Chris. But that's a year or 2 years till they can appeal again to the Second Circuit. So no matter what happens for at least pretty much 2 years, XRP has regulatory clarity and it's not a security on the secondary market. I love that. That's my highlight.
The fact that they can't appeal is so appealing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean that was actually a great one to see come through. Highlight of my week so far. I mean, it's been a varied one. I think on the work side, although there has been a lot of, shall we say, chaos, for lack of a better word, it has been a really good opportunity to kind of engage deeper and look at where there might still be additional areas for us to improve at a systemic level. And, I'm naturally a problem solver, so I love finding problems to solve. But I guess on a more personal level, we actually had a lovely little work outing yesterday, where a bunch of us got taken out on a boat into the Waitemata Harbour here in Auckland to go whale and dolphin watching. Didn't see any whales, but we saw a bunch of dolphins, and that was really cool.
Yeah, that would have been nice. All right, I'll get over to New Zealand and hang out with you guys soon, do some of that fun stuff. All right, best movie you've seen recently? Alex, what do you got?
That's a tough one.
I'll jump in because I watched Last of the Mohicans again the other night. Hadn't seen that for ages. It's long, but anything with people shooting bows and arrows, I'm kind of into. So great. If you haven't seen The Last of the Mohicans, classic.
I've got one for you. The Hunt for Sugar Man.
I don't know.
I haven't seen that. It's a great one. Haven't rewatched it recently. And another one that randomly popped into my head, which I haven't actually watched in ages, but it was a great movie and I remember watching it, was Molly's Game. If you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend that movie as well.
Hopefully this show's been recorded and you can listen to it back and write down what those movies were because I'll check them out. I've only got one more question here. What was one of the most recent roles filled for the hires for the Futureverse?
Honestly, I don't have that information at hand. I know there's been a couple different roles and new hires across tech and creative recently. But as I kind of touched on at the start of this, that isn't something that we'll kind of be delving into a lot publicly, the kind of inner workings and structure of the company itself. Our focus is more to update you on the awesome products that we're rolling out.
Som, have you got any more questions coming through that I haven't seen? If Som's even here.
Hey.
Team.
Hey, I'm here. Somebody asking if the websites Fluff World, Futureverse for Network, Root Network, Mar can be rolled up into one. Too many sites to explore. I don't know if that would be feasible. So
I don't think that makes any sense, to be honest. They are very separate standalone companies. You wouldn't merge the Root Network into Futureverse, into Fluff World. There will be some consolidation across some of, say, our social accounts. I think we're looking to consolidate a few of the kind of Fluff World associated brands into one. But, there is a specific need and use for these constituent sites, especially when you look at just, say, Futureverse versus the Root Network. So no, there is no intention to merge those into one at the moment.
I think Ripple and the XRPL are a good example of this. They are two very separate things, and they need to be kept separate because that's what decentralization is about. Ripple is a software company that utilizes the XRPL, and the XRPL is open source, decentralized layer 1 blockchain. And that's the same thing with the Root Network and the Futureverse, or Futureverse. I mean, I'm happy to open the floor up if anybody's got anything they want to come and share. I'd love to hear feedback.
There's an interesting question here, which is basically someone suggesting that we have Monica Long come in and take over our comms. She runs Ripple. She's very busy. Yes, she's on our board of directors, but that doesn't mean that she's an employee that's going to come in and work in our comms department. She runs one of the largest crypto companies in the world. She meets with our leadership a lot, but yeah, that's just an unrealistic expectation.
It's unrealistic to have the president of Ripple join our community stand-up in the morning. I'd love to see it drop in.
I know, right?
That'd be
That
awesome.
would be great. I'd love it.
Yeah, I'd try. I'll be digging for alpha too. All right. Anyone in the room? I mean, it's been a very vocal week on Discord. Any of those frustrations we can address in any way, I'd love to hear them. Like, this is such a great opportunity to just, move away from the keyboard and step up and just say hi, because we're all real people behind here, and we want to do whatever it takes to reassure you guys we're doing everything we can. And I know that answer regarding the order of things that are coming out isn't what you wanted to hear. There is nothing else going on behind the scenes that we can explain to you, that right now the marketplace came out when it did in beta to be tested, but the order has remained the same.
Yeah. There is one good question here, actually, which I think is an important one for everyone to kind of, take into consideration, which is, what am I doing for my mental health? And personally, I mean, it's a very important topic. It's something that I'm very passionate about. If anyone knows, my personal story and my brother's personal story, you could understand why that is something that's so important to me. I actually have a few things that I try and do, ice baths in the morning, exercise as much as possible. Also, as I say, like, I love getting my hands dirty and just fixing and building things. So, often I'll take a lunch break and go and kind of work on the property itself just to still be productive, but in a different mindset. And I think that kind of shifting of focus while still being occupied is really beneficial, because it's still actively working, but it's working your brain in a different direction, and it can really help you shift your perspective on things. It is, admittedly, I do find it difficult at times, especially when conversations are getting very intense, to, I guess, like, what is probably the best thing to do there in a lot of cases is actually to step away, go for a walk, meditate, whatever it may be, to ensure that when it comes to communicating effectively, doing so not from a defensive position or an emotional position. But then obviously there is, an expected time element to it. So yeah, there's a lot that I'm doing. I love to read as well. There's some great books that I've been getting recently as well. One of those, for example, if you haven't read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, incredible book for anyone who is even remotely fascinated with the creative process. And if anyone else is interested in book suggestions, I have quite an extensive library here and across a lot of different topics. But yeah, mental health is important. And, it may be a meme, but everyone should go out and touch grass. It can do wonders for your mindset.
Yeah, Shara brought a energy healer in to speak to the whole team, and that was a great hour spent learning about her journey as well. I've got a one-on-one booked in with her tomorrow, because it is really important to be able to, reassess where you're at. So I'm not coming to stand up at 8 o'clock tomorrow, because I got a one-on-one with the energy healer. But we do have a question that's come in, and it's obviously one I saw that we had missed, and that's regarding the vesting period. When will that start, or has that started already? Let me just go and read that question.
Yeah, I think I answered that in the channel itself. So the official vesting period, according to white paper distribution, we communicated that. Was that in May? That started with the first distribution through a root quest or challenge, I think, as it was at the time.
I have a question if nobody else wants to get up and ask anything. I guess just with the whole Mark thing and Halo Labs, I feel like with every other announcement, partner, people that are working, Futureverse is always edified very well and kind of explained why they chose to deal with this team. I know they're a complete third party and anybody can build, but obviously you guys chose to work with them to launch this. So why not do the same thing? Like Crucible, they haven't delivered a product, yet there was a whole big announcement about Crucible and why we're choosing to work together. Why zero information about Halo?
I've already covered this. Crucible was a investment and a public partnership of bringing two products together. Anyone can build on the Root network. It's not up to us to go and kind of publish information as to who the team is. That's up to them. If I don't know if the founders of Blur publicly publish their information about their team, but you don't go to the team at Ethereum and say, hey, why aren't you guys doxing the founders of Blur?
But Blur didn't launch a quest saying, hey, go test this out. This is who we chose to have launch first. Futureverse did do that. Blur didn't do that. So I guess like with every other announcement, like there's no word from the Futureverse as to why, like, hey, they do amazing things. This is all they're capable of. And we fully believe that they're going to.
Yeah. We've worked with their team extensively in the past, and they've helped build a lot of stuff for us. It's something we didn't think was necessary to go into great detail. It's not like, as I said, if anyone else came to us and said, hey, we want to build a marketplace, we would have supported them in doing that, but we wouldn't then say, hey, you need to go and kind of publicly dox yourself if you want to launch a marketplace and a quest with us.
Yeah, I'm not asking to like dox the team, just more why the team chose to support them through a quest. Like there has to be some type of belief, or like, hey, they really do these things amazing.
Because they're the first people building a marketplace on the Root network, which is exactly what the community want, and we want to get apps live on the Root network as soon as possible. If someone comes to us tomorrow with an app for the Root network that they want to launch and they want to do a quest around it, we'll happily look at that and say, yeah, this is great because you're providing utility to our community, and it's an opportunity for us to support you as builders on the Root network by driving traffic to it through us distributing Root to these people.
I do also think it was a little bit built into the question as well. Like anything regarding quests, we keep very, very close to our chest. Like most of us on the team don't even know what's coming up next. So the fact that Mark was part of this quest, it needed to come out with any sort of telegraphing in front of it. So we couldn't exactly do a big AMA with them before the quest. Otherwise, it might give part of that sort of delight and surprise, even though it wasn't as delightful as we hoped, away. So anything regarding the quest will be a little bit more, shall we say, not telegraphed as much.
Yeah. Generally with quests or any form of distribution of rewards, we make the announcement that it is going live or just about to go live. It's not something that we generally provide a whole bunch of build up information to.
Alex Metablocks, just on that, like Bildo's line of thought there. Like I understand where you're coming from with regards to these themes with the quests, but was the plan, or the first question, was it always planned to release on that day?
I'm not going to go into how the cadence of our quests works. This is something that I've already addressed. Like how we operate as a business isn't a topic that we publicly discuss. It's just not how businesses operate. They don't publicly go into all of their inner workings.
Yeah,
we have a whole series of quests that have scheduled. We chose to push that one out at the time to meet some of the requirements across both the community and the product development and partnership.
Yeah, and I don't think you can't be surprised with the feedback from the community. Like what Bildo's just said, there's a quest being rolled out, and the community's starting to realise that there's no we don't know whether there is certainty behind the dates that the quests are going to be released, and all you had to say was, we've got a quest coming out, it's with a partner that we've been working with that's trusted. There was nothing, and it was released basically into the weekend.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important to realise that, as you just highlighted, we're working with a partner. Anytime there's a third party involved, that means that we don't have full control over the timeline. So for us to make any commitments to timeline when it involves a third party is really just setting ourselves up for failure and more likely to kind of lead to a murkier comms situation with lots of updates.
Yeah, and that was something that
I do
go.
understand, that there are some legitimate concerns from like the security perspective, for example, as well. There should have been more public information published by the Halo Lab team, especially around the fact that they had been fully audited. And I can understand why, with a new kind of product launching like that, there is a certain period of time required to generate, trust and ensure that it is something that is safe to connect to. And that's something that, we've taken on board to ensure that we have some very robust comms in place around security because, Mark was fully audited, but that wasn't something that was, publicly discussed.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm only speaking for myself, not the other community, but I don't personally want to know an exact date when something's going to be announced. But if there is something that's pushing through timelines, then I think it's more about how the information is framed from yourself about what's to come out. Like you could have, in my opinion, there's no reason. I don't see, unless the Quest wasn't going to be the marketplace and then that's what you decided to release, then there's no reason why you couldn't have talked about it last week and said, this is what's happening and there's a marketplace and it's who we're working.
Why do we need to predate an announcement with an announcement about an announcement? Like if we're launching a quest around a marketplace, we don't need to put a pre-announcement out around that. I guess I understand that, yes, there is certain information that could have been included within the launch of that, but it doesn't need us to, we don't see the need to front run our own comms. And the same goes with, we get questions around partnerships all the time. When is this partnership happening? When's that happening? We'll put the comms out relating to that when we are ready to put it out. We're not going to front run those.
Yeah, and I understand things with regards to the partnerships, but I just think, and it's fine because obviously it sounds to me like your mindset is still that you are operating how you want to, whereas I feel like it's pretty evident from community feedback that there's the way that information's being put together is probably not as much as whole as it should be. That's all it is. That's all the way. That's the way that I'm saying it. It's not about timeframes being pressed or what it is. It's information's being put out, and it's then other people go out to research and find out who it is. But not only that, it's that this is the same group that's working or hosting the API for the staking dashboard as well. So there's obviously a big integration there. And it's like, okay, well that's fine. There's obviously a level of trust that comes from that, but it's just a little bit of messaging that I feel like it's being missed, and that's what's creating all this pressure.
Yeah, no, I do get that. I think it's look, like if I'm speaking candidly, from our perspective, it just didn't seem like it was something that needed to be discussed. Like, and there's a lot of people that have come out and said, "Oh, why didn't you say, go into all of this explicit detail about your relationship with Halo Lab?" It's purely because that wasn't the focus for us. It was the focus on the tech, the product itself. So,
but
yes,
but probably the one thing, like, to take a step back, we're connecting our, you're asking effectively creating a quest that's saying, here's a trusted partner. But, it's not something that, it's not in a test environment. It's people that have all their assets that are going to connect to the site to do the different actions that are related to buying and selling assets. Like, it's not a small task. It's a big one.
No, of course. So and on that note, that was where I was saying before in terms of like highlighting the actual proper due diligence and best practices that were followed by Mark when it came to, auditing all of their contracts, etc. That is something that should have been published more openly, and there's certainly a lesson for us there in terms of how we work to enforce that moving forward.
Yeah, and like I can't remember if it was released on a Friday or Saturday New Zealand time, but I mean, like, somebody that knows it's going to have a lot of work to follow up through with feedback, like, release it at the start of the week and just be open with everyone to why, and you know, be so people can be proactive. Whereas you've got that couple of days where there's people that are, you know, I don't know, working for Futureverse's community managers, having to reply to messages they shouldn't have to be because I'm sure they're not getting paid for it. And
No,
I just
they
think
are.
that
People get paid. People get paid for any time they work.
okay, that's fine. I guess
we
what
have
I'm, I
staff
guess
that are rostered on to work on the weekends.
okay, that's fine. I just think it's not an optimal time to do it. That's all, and that's just like I said. My feedback that I put through in my post is where it is. And,
of course.
You know,
and I appreciate the DM you sent me. I haven't had a chance to respond properly. It's been a crazy few days, as you know. But I do appreciate you coming in and presenting your kind of thoughts and feedbacks around how all of this has happened in a very constructive way, and it's been very helpful and much appreciated.
Yeah,
I'd just like to add to that as well, Metablocks, if I could. I appreciate you reaching out to me too. I can't spend a lot of time on Discord, and even though I might feel like I'm part of the community team, I'm just a sub in here. I'm on the marketing team, so when I got people telling me that you reached out to me in Discord, like, I got over there straight away, and all your points were super valid. At the same time, it's we all, a lot of people did work through that weekend. You're right, but it comes back to that third party again. It's like not wanting to disappoint the community by not hitting that end of month, while also knowing that it just needed to happen, and all of us behind the scenes just saying, well, this is what has to happen. We're just going to get on with it. So it's a really hard balance of meeting the expectations of the parameters we set about, a quest a month and making that on time. But yeah,
for me personally, sorry, mate. For me personally, I don't sweat. I'm not worried about if a quest is coming out on this day or that day. It's more about, like, just, and there's enough information there and enough feedback over the last 12 months or more for Alex and the team to be able to reflect on, go, okay, well, what is the what is the feedback we're getting, and Alex is open in saying, okay, here's some of it is tied up inside stuff that we're choosing to keep internal, and that's totally fine. But I still do think there's some sense checking needs to happen before these things, because when someone's so close to it, it's like, okay, hang on, we're about to release the quest, and it's linked to a marketplace. We're asking for our community to go and connect and do these items. It's not in a testnet environment. This is not a small thing. Okay, when should we be releasing it? Does it matter if we release it on a Friday? Is that optimal? Saturday, whatever it was. Like, just going through those processes. And then, if there's one or two people in the Discord that are saying, oh, it's this, is it the end of the month? Is it whatever it is? Like, if those timeframes aren't realistic, like, to meet it, a week before the end of the month, say, hey guys, we are just working with a partner to get this quest put together. It's all, it's all for the benefit of you guys, and the timing will happen when it happens, instead of, like, keeping people guessing, because then that just builds the tension through the Discord, which doesn't need to be there.
That's all totally fair.
I appreciate that feedback, but as I said, this was also a quest that was reliant on a third party, and there are timelines there that we don't control. Now, we have other quests in the backlog that we can pull out whenever we deem necessary, but there's always ongoing development, shifting timelines. So it was actually down to, okay, is this the quest that we want to go out with, or are we going to go with a different one? And that wasn't a decision or a piece of information that we could provide publicly a week beforehand. So I get that you're wanting to have more transparency, but in many situations we don't have that information available, and as soon as we do, we make it public.
Yeah, and that's fine, Alex. I totally understand that, and that was, like, what I said, basically how it came across to a community member on the outside. Is that's exactly how it seems. It seems that it's not planned, and there is balls being juggled in the air, And maybe, and potentially, I don't need an answer, but maybe the quest was that mightn't have even been the quest that was going to be released, and it's just things are being put into place to try and fill it together, and then having to maybe release things that aren't as well executed. That's all. But thank you. I'll let other people speak. Thank you.
Metablocks, thank you for not adding to the noise this week, mate, for stepping back for a little bit longer, letting things cool down, and then just bringing your views across in a really calm and proficient way. So thanks for everything you contribute, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, seconded. I did notice there's one question just in the channel here relating to confirmation in the UI of the Futureverse dashboard about whether the quest is finished or has been completed successfully or not. This is something that we're following up with the team that managed the dashboard itself, and aiming to get a full response to you guys ASAP. I'll post an update in that channel as soon as we do. I am conscious that this has been almost 60 minutes max. I do have another meeting I need to jump to, but I can take one last question.
Hi.
Hey, who's that? Oh, is that Bailey?
Yeah. When do
Hey,
I get
Bailey,
to
how are
play on
you?
Fluff World?
We will be posting some key updates on what the future of our kind of game experiences look like soon. There's a lot of new games and experiences in development, and some really exciting updates. Fluff World itself isn't planned as a game, but a part of what will be the wider metaverse game experience. I can't give you, an exact timeline on that, but there is some really exciting developments happening in the background, and we'll update you all soon.
Okay,
Hey,
thank
Bailey.
you.
Hey, Bailey, it's Mo Meta here. Loving the content you're putting out. When can we expect this next video to come out from you? This is a when question. You'll get used to these. When is Bailey's next video?
This weekend.
Ooh, you heard it here, folks.
Nice.
If you're a content creator in the space, look out. But better still, collaborate. That's the way to move forward. Thanks for joining us, Bailey. And say hi to your dad for me.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Did I just get kicked out of Discord?